she does have to take some responsibility for her party and the fact that they have failed the African American community and many minority communities. If you look at the inner cities across this country that are almost all over the place, you know, run by Democrat leadership. My home city of Detroit, Michigan has had Democrat mayors, Democrat city council, Democrat county commissioners for my entire lifetime. And that city has struggled in the African American community, and
you think that's because of the party? You think that's because the party in charge? What do you think about the governor of Maryland cutting off billions of dollars in transportation infrastructure investment to the west side of Baltimore just a few months after the uprising that happened there as an example of the limitations of municipal governments to be able to invest in underserved communities?
Well, I don't know enough about that issue to speak to it. It's a perfect example, though, isn't it? Well, I don't know, Chris. As I said, I don't know enough about that issue to respond to it. But I do think that successful local municipal governments are governments that work with their governors of both parties. And I do think that that's something that the Democratic Party has to answer to.
Rick, what do you think?
It's something the Republican Party has to answer for. I mean, Detroit basically won World War II for the United States of America, saved us from fascism and Hitler, saved the world from fascism and Hitler, and its reward was the white people fled the city after African Americans were invited to work in the factories. They basically put up a wall. They went to Oakland County.
That's not how it happened.
That's exactly how it happened.
Young came in as mayor of the city of Detroit and basically
the county supervisor in Oakland said that he'd seize Detroit as an Indian reservation and we should throw blankets over the side.
Wait a second. Let me ask you this question, Katie. Are you saying that white flight is not a real phenomenon that's happening in American cities?
No, absolutely, it is a phenomenon. I'm speaking specifically to Detroit, Michigan, where the Democrat mayor, Coleman Young, basically asked the white people of the city of Detroit to leave. That's what caused white flight at that time.
Honestly, that is your argument for why white flight happened in the city of Detroit?
Chris, this argument is not worthy of your respect.
Regardless of white flight, that city has been governed by Democrats my entire lifetime.
Katie Packer.
And that city has failed the black community in that city.
First of all, you think white flight happened in Detroit because a black mayor told white people to leave Detroit? Is that the story of Detroit
Chris,
white flight?
I grew up in Detroit. You talk to people that live in Detroit, and you'll have a better understanding of how that happened.
Yes, if you talk to white people that left Detroit, I imagine that would happen. Joining me now, MSNBC contributor Ben Jealous, senior fellow at Center for American Progress and former president and CEO of the NAACP. Well, let's talk about this. This is a story I hear all the time from conservatives. They say that people need to get off the quote, black people need to get off the quote Democratic plantation. Right. It's a term that Breitbart loves, and that not Democratic for some weird reason, leadership in city after city from Chicago to Baltimore to Detroit, all those cities has failed, and black folks in those cities are doing terribly, and therefore the Democratic Party is responsible. What do you think about that?
You know, look, right now we're fighting over who's going to control the White House. And we've seen Donald Trump go sort of a bridge too far, but it's not the first bridge too far, right? It's like the fifth bridge too far. And his party apparently likes to hang out on the fourth bridge too far. And for them to then turn around and say, well, you know, the Democrats have been the problem. When we have governors here like Hogan, I mean, by the way, I'm doing this from West Baltimore, right? And we've seen these Republican governors in states across the country constrain what our cities can do, bankrupt their schools, bankrupt transportation, and then point out the mayor and say it's the mayor's fault. And that's just kind of a weak, you know, it's just weak. And that's the game that the Republican Party plays. But we got to get back to the big issue, which is that, you know, we have Donald Trump way out there just staying on this road to stupid that the Republican Party has been on for like 50 years, just getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, we found out that many people in his party actually, you know, they're cool with the road to stupid. They're cool with 3-4 bridges too far. But that fifth bridge too far is just too much.
I want to say just one thing to just distinguish two different things here, because I think it's important. I don't want to say that Democratic leadership in America's cities has been uniformly excellent, and in some cases it has been absolutely terrible and disastrous. There are all kinds of terrible problems with, say, the leadership of the city of Chicago that we have documented in depth on this show, or the leadership in Baltimore, which we have documented in depth on this show. Yep. But that is a wholly distinct thing from saying it is the reason that inner cities in America, particularly poor and black areas, are having a hard time is because of Democratic leadership, when everything we know about the accrued history of white supremacy and redlining and segregation and white flight and disinvestment is the reason largely that has brought us about to this moment, that if you elected a Republican mayor, you would be in a different situation, strikes me as an implausible counterfactual.
I mean, what the Republican Party did, during the time of desegregation is they decided to become the quote-unquote white man's party. And they took people from the Democratic Party, the old Dixiecrat base, increasingly throughout the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and so they played their role. No, look, absolutely, both parties have had poor leaders who deserve a lot of blame. But the reality is that when you hear Ms. Packer say that white flight in Detroit happened because Coleman Young asked white people to leave, I mean, that's kind of when I stopped listening.
Ben Jealous, thank you for being with me tonight.